Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Absolute Game of Nerds with your hosts, JP and Rohan. And today, in episode three, we're going to get into our acquisitions that we picked up in 2022. We're going to talk about what books we got. And then we're going to talk about any regrets we have from 2022 or any misses we had. And then we'll get into our targets for 2023. Now, some of you may have heard last week in the hunt for 181, what a target, one of our targets. So we'll get into some more details on other targets we have. And based on time, we'll try to get into some of the our thoughts on the movies and shows of 2022 and what shows we really liked and what shows we found disappointing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let Rohan start. We got his slides ready. I'm gonna bring him up here, but we're gonna let him talk about books he got in 2022.
First off, I'll apologize. I lost my voice over the holidays, so I am a little raspy today, but I will do my best here. My top 10 of 2022. So again, I started collecting again in 2022. So unlike JP, I don't have books from my childhood that I had left over. So my top 10 gets from 2022 are also coincidentally then my top 10 books in my PC. Um, Also, really interesting. Nine of my top 10 were all acquired in the last couple months via trade. So didn't have to spend a new dollar to get these. But starting at number 10, we got Iron Man number one. I really like this book. This is one of the few classic solo covers I remember as a kid. It was this one, the Wolverine Limited one, and the Punisher one that always stuck. Oh, and the Silver Surfer one that I always remembered. So getting this one was a big get for me. Number 9 was that one I just mentioned, Silver Surfer. Number 1, right? First solo series of the Silver Surfer. One of my three favorite characters that I've mentioned both in the last 2 episodes. Number 8 would be Iron Man 55, which of course is the first appearance of Thanos. Thanos is one of my top 3 villains in Marvel and in general. So that was a big one for me to get. Number 7 is Marvel Spotlight number 5, the first Ghost Rider appearance. This is the one in the book in the set of 10 here that I did not trade for. I bought this one. I got a streaming deal on it that I found. So I picked it up. And I actually sent this off to CGC. It should be actually arriving back today or tomorrow.
Would it one come back as?
This was a 2.5. Like it looks much better, but you can't tell in the bottom right corner. Someone took like a pair of scissors and just like cut a 3.5-inch slice through the cover. You can't see it unless you like pull the page apart. So this is like a perfect example of like buying the book, not the grade, right? It presents very well, especially I've got it cleaned and pressed. So like that spine roll is also fixed. So it's a 2.5, but it'll look real clean.
It looks nice.
Yeah. Number 6 is Fantastic Four. Number 52, of course, the first appearance of Black Panther. I'm a big Black Panther fan. So just another fun one to get there. Number 5 is Amazing Spider-Man number 50. In my opinion, this is the most iconic Spider-Man cover. It's my favorite Spider-Man cover. First appearance of Kingpin, which is also my 3 favorite Spider-Man villains would be Kingpin, Dr. Octopus, and Green Goblin. Those first appearances are books I hope to get down the line. This is the one I got now. So happy to have it. Number 4, Silver Surfer number 4. In my opinion, this is a top 3 all-time cover.
Heck yeah.
I just love this thing. It is just screaming awesome. So this is one of the early like big grails I always targeted out.
Definitely iconic.
Yeah. Number 3 would be Fantastic Four 49, another awesome cover, but this is the first full appearance of Galactus and the second appearance, but first cover of my guy, Silver Surfer, a huge book for Silver Surfer, right? Number 2 will be giant size X-Men number 1. I love the X-Men. X-Men 1 is probably not going to be within my reach at anytime soon. So this is the next best thing to me. And this is also the team that I grew up on. I grew up watching the X-Men cartoon. This was the team in the cartoon for the most part. So this is as good of a book as I can get right now.
Now, this is considered the second appearance of Wolverine?
Second appearance of Wolverine, first appearance of Nightcrawler, Storm, and Colossus.
Now, what Wolverine was in Hulk 182, correct? Oh, but I think he
Yes.
was, right?
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
part of it.
So
But this one came out in between that, right? From what I gathered.
no,
So,
so I think CGC now calls 182 the second cameo.
okay.
Because the 180, he's in the last panel, which we talked about last week, where he's coming on, he's like, fight me, I'm the Wolverine. 181, he's on the cover, he's through the whole book. 182 is like he's on the first page, and it's like a helicopter from like the Canadian government that's like, all right, Wolverine, you've had your chance, your time is up, come back. And they like reel him in, and then the
That's it.
book goes on. So it's like it's one panel 180, one panel 182. So then this, I think CGC now considers the second full appearance of Wolverine
And a cover appearance, too. There you
and
go.
a cover appearance. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the top book, as I mentioned, my favorite guy, Silver Surfer. So Fantastic Four 48, first appearance of the Silver Surfer. I will say, before I got both of these, I always thought 49 was a far superior cover. And I still think it's the better cover of 48 and 49. But once I got this book in hand, which I got, this is my most recent trade, it really like stuck out to me. Like, it is an iconic cover. And I think now the gap has closed between 48 and 49. I still think 49 is better. But I definitely am digging this. And I also, in my trade, I've got FF50. So I have now the full Galactus Silver Surfer trilogy, which is a big get for me. In my opinion, that is best trilogy storyline in comic books. So I'm happy to have those three. So
Yeah,
that's the top 10 for me.
that's definitely an iconic cover. I have it's from the 90s. It's a big hardbound book with Spider-Man on the cover that is, I think it's like an encyclopedia, but it's a history of Marvel. It's a really good book. Great to learn the history. Uh, Granted, it's only the 90s, so a lot's happened since then, but this book was one of those ones that was in that book,
Uh,
as a showcase because it's a Kirby, right? Jack Kirby
yep.
drew it,
Yep.
right? So, and just that the guy in the front and Galactus just always stuck out because the 90s were, besides Spider-Man and Wolverine, X-Men, those three, very cosmic, right? The stories
Yeah.
were cosmic with Silver Surfer, Galactus, Thanos, the Infinity Gauntlet. So this definitely, like, I
Secret
remember the
Wars,
cover,
and yeah.
but I don't remember 49. I mean, it looks familiar, but this is the one I've always known, right?
Yeah.
For that
Yeah,
one.
I think most people, I think more people would recognize this cover over 49. I just think 49 is a slightly better
Oh
cover.
yeah, yeah. When you look at them, but this one's iconic. They're all three of them. The whole series, like you said, the story itself, the covers, Kirby, and I'm not to knock Kirby, and we can debate this another day, but I never liked Kirby's art. Again,
Oh, really?
he compared to others I knew and others I've seen since that time. I thought Buscema, I thought Ramada were all better than Kirby. But I'm not going to knock Kirby. I'm just saying if I had to choose a book based on artwork, I would choose from the Bronze Age, definitely a Ramita book or a Buscema book like that Silver Surfer for. Just that's
Silver
just the
Ford is
way.
Mishima.
I mean, it's a great cover. No knock on Kirby. I mean, we wouldn't have what we had today without him. So I'm just saying, if I've always thought that his artwork was different, but it's very, it's his work, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you can tell.
You can recognize Kirby, no doubt. I mean, I stand by the whole Jack the King Kirby. He's my guy number one. If we, we definitely should have an artist podcast. That'd be a great episode, I think.
Yeah, no
Um,
knock on him. I mean, granted, he started all of it. Who started? I don't know, but again, he's iconic in that King Kirby, like you said. So
yeah, and
nothing against him.
I'll agree with you though. Silver Surfer 4 is definitely a better cover than these two, without question, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into my list here. And first off, what I'll talk about is, you know, our first episode we gave our background as to, how we got back into where we started and how we got back into it. So for whatever reason, I went to a comic shop. I think I mentioned this on our first podcast, but I got it back to this comic shop at the tail end of COVID, I guess, tail end of 2021, and was just amazed by the books there and the values, and thought, let me go back and check my books. Let me go back and see what I have, and realized that I had sold some books during, prior to COVID, just because I wasn't collecting anymore. And so my goal when I started 2022 was to buy back the books that I had traded or sold. So that was my first focus. Now that's not going to be the first book I'm going to show, um, but through that, getting back in to acquire those books took me to the antique stores, the flea markets, and auctions, and all that has culminated this throughout 2022 with finding books, being able to trade those books for those books I wanted. So all that has basically helped me get the acquisitions I had. Started off just trying to get the books I traded or lost, and then turned out finding, even some more books throughout the time. So let me start with now. This one we'll talk about again later on. I don't have this book anymore. I traded this book, but it was one I found at a flea market uh, back in my hometown. I went there Sunday morning. I was, staying at my parents' house in the morning or my dad's house. I got up, went to this auction, or excuse me, this flea market, and going through a bunch of long boxes. Wasn't finding much, and there was a couple guys going through them. And the guy who had that section of the flea market came up and said, "You guys, here's some things I found." And he had this book and a New Mutants '87, but it was the reprint, second print, the gold book, and I think a third one. Now he thought that New Mutants '87 was the bigger book, so he won $100 for all those three books. And I knew this one was Counterman because I just saw it on Comic Tom or something. I would have not known who that guy was on the cover because it is pretty iconic. That pink and that weird guy coming out the door. It's a weird book, and I was like $100, heck yeah! And I ended up trading this book to someone on Instagram for a bunch of other things. He basically gave me almost, I think, 10 books for it. And I don't wish I would have kept this one because I didn't want to get it graded, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to keep it in good condition. So I wasn't in grading at the time. This was earlier in the year, but it's a cool book to find out of nowhere. I mean, I did not expect to find this book at a flea market. It was beat to heck, probably a 2.0. But hopefully the gentleman who has it got it cleaned and maybe got it graded. But it's a cool book and one I'd like to find again.
Yeah, our one of our first couple conversations was regarding the trade of this book. So I definitely
Yeah,
remember that.
I know you're like after I did the trade, you're like I probably want to trade that.
I think I said it before you traded it.
And I was like I didn't for whatever reason I thought it wasn't gonna. I don't know if I could have kept the golden age. It was kind of beat, and I didn't want to. I'd rather have it graded and preserved than when it was beat like that. But
Yeah.
I thought I could have found a better copy. But either way, someone else is enjoying it now. That's all right. That's part of what we do.
Exactly.
Next book I just got within probably about a month ago is Submariner 1. This was an iconic cover that I remember trading, back to the 90s. A book I didn't comprehend buying. I'm not sure if it was out of our price range at the time, but it was definitely a book I wanted, but didn't come across very often, at least back then. But one I always wanted to have in my collection just because I like the cover and to get one graded. I didn't care what grade as long as, like you said earlier, with that um, Marvel Spotlight 5, as long as it presents, that's the most important part for us. We're not looking for 9.8s, at least when it comes to these books, and
Yeah. Buy the
that's
book,
even
not the grade.
that's right. Next one. Now these first three these are honorable mentions. Okay, so Sub 1 is a great cover. I love it. Tech 20 or 239 was a great cover. Cool book. Cool to find in the wild. This is another one I found in the wild. This is Iron Man 39. This is just a great cover in my opinion. It's origin, the retelling of the story of Iron Man. That's the key to it. Maybe $100 book. It's not in the greatest shape, but it presents pretty well. Again, I'd love to get it graded. I just not familiar as much with how CGC does books from 1975 and prior. I know there's some extra cost to it and whatnot, so I don't know what kind of grade it come back as to send it in, so it looks good as it is now. So
Yeah, I
again,
think if you said it's about $100 book, you could do it on the economy option for CGC.
okay, maybe we'll have to talk about that because there are a few like this that I have that are pre-75 that I'd love to send in and get slabbed. This is definitely one of them. It's one of my honorable mentions. I found at an antique store and got paid $40 for it. Wasn't a screaming deal, but it was a decent enough deal for that type of a cover. And when I was at Ollie's, the little supermarket or what do you call it, bargain outlet. They have this poster and a giant poster. So now I have the poster and the comic. It's pretty cool that they made it that way. Uh, so now starting with my top 10. Number 10 here I have is Silver Surfer. Number 4, I already talked about, iconic Buscema cover. My grade is presents well, lower grade. Just got it in, worked a deal with a gentleman on Instagram to get it. I'm just happy to have it, to display it, just like that sub one. I think that's just iconic. It goes back to my childhood of seeing these and in different various magazines, wanting to find them in the wild, wanting to get them. They weren't available. They still are hard to find in any show, in my opinion. When you go to a comic show, you're not going to see these often, and if you do, they're going to be some good money. So I'm happy to have it. One I probably tried to draw many, many times as a kid. It's just a cool looking cover.
On this cover too, I personally think this is my favorite depiction of Thor on that cover. Like, I really like how Buscema draws him in this, with how his helmet looks and his face. I think this is my favorite depiction of Thor.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he looks good. And then the rainbow, what's that called? The Bifrost
Bifrost. Yeah, that
that's
looks
on
dope
there.
with it coming through. Yeah.
And then in the background, you can see Midgard, or what's it, or
Asgard.
Asgard there. Midgard's Earth, right?
Yeah.
But so I just think it's a great cover and glad to have it. Maybe someday I'll upgrade the grade, but at this point, just a great one to display. So number 9, disregard Venom on the right there, but Marvel Superheroes number 20, this Doom cover. This is not a great grade. In my opinion, it presents well enough for what I paid for it. Happy to have it. I think, Rohan, you helped me find this book from a gentleman you knew,
Yeah.
and it's just a great display book. No idea. It's probably a 1.5, maybe a 2.5, somewhere in that range. But I just think it presents well enough. It's a cool book. Doom is
Yeah.
one of my favorite villains. Not portrayed well in the movies yet, and I'm hopeful that he will become a Thanos level villain in the MCU. And I think
I
this
think
is
it's
a great cover
definitely
for it.
coming. Definitely coming. And everybody is holding Doom books, or if they're selling them for a lot.
Yep, know he's coming. Next book, this is number 8 for me. This is Dark Knight Returns. This is the second printing. Wish I had the first printing. This one I found on eBay, and it's iconic for many reasons. Frank Miller has so many iconic covers he's done through the time, through Daredevil, Wolverine, and this book. This book has a great story. I'm reading through it now. I've mentioned on previous podcasts, I don't like to read books. I just like the covers. But this is definitely one I'm trying to get into because it was, from what I understand, a great storyline about Superman, Batman, and a grizzled old Batman. And it's just a great iconic cover. The original artwork originally just sold for like $2.4 million at auction for this particular, just the cover.
I've Googled a few times best Batman covers, and on several of the lists, this is number one. It wouldn't be my personal number one, but this one is often at number one.
It wouldn't be mine either, but it's definitely in the top 5. And I don't know why it sold for as much as it did. The original artwork at 2.4 million.
I think all original artwork just goes for that kind of money, right? Like, there's a page from Secret Wars 8, the Black Spider-Man jazz hands. Just not the cover, but the original art from a page within that of Spider-Man went for $3 million.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's a great cover. I'm glad to have a copy of it. I wish it was first printing. This one, like I said, it was an eBay purchase, and when I got the eBay purchase back, when it was delivered, it was the trade paperback. And I emailed the guy back and said, "Hey, this is not what you had the picture of." And he said, "Oh, my apologies," he or she, and said, "Don't bash me yet. I'll resend it out to you." So for $10, I got the trade paperback and the second printing. Now, I was trying to trade this second printing at a recent show, and none of the dealers wanted it. They all want first printing, so I'll hold on to it for $10. It's a great book. No difference in first printing, but one day maybe we'll come across first printing, but there's no difference on cover. So it's just iconic, and I'm glad to have it. Next one, this is our top Batman cover right here, Batman 423. I love Todd McFarlane, all of his artwork. It's a book that I did not have as a kid. I don't think I knew about it
No,
To
nor
be
did
quite honest.
I didn't know about it either.
I knew he did Incredible Hulk, and I knew he did Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man. Um, and other than that, I mean, I might have known the Coyote that he did prior to coming to Marvel, but I collected as many Hulk books as I could and as many of the Spider-Man books that I could that he had drawn and obviously Spawn. I did not know he did Batman. I
Yeah,
found this one at a paper con. So basically, they were selling books, artwork, and comics, and I got this book raw for $15, and
as a steal.
I could not believe it was the newsstand for $15. I got a ton of stuff that day that I couldn't believe I got, and sent it out to CGC. I knew it was a little rough. It wasn't in the best condition, but it definitely presents well. Maybe I could have cleaned and pressed it and got it higher, and maybe we'll do it someday. But it's just iconic cover. Happy to have it slabbed for $15 plus what 20 to get it slabbed. You know, that's a good investment into that book just to have it. Just like Silver Surfer 4.
Yeah,
You're buying the book, not the grade. And this is what this book's about. Great cover. One not a childhood book, but childhood favorite artist in my opinion. So glad to have that one to add. Um, this is one I wanted just because this is Lobo, first appearance of Lobo, Omega Men #3. And Lobo, in my opinion, when I collected as a kid, was supposed to be the next Wolverine or the Wolverine of
DC.
DC, right? And so I wanted this book. And the iconic picture of Lobo is always Lobo 1, where you see his smiling face on the whole cover, right? And this, I thought that was the first Lobo, but found out this was actually his first appearance. And so this one eluded me as a kid. And I found this at an antique store near me. The guy had two of them. One was graded at an 8.0, and still wants $150 for it. And he had this one in a case in the back. And he's like, "Oh," I said, "How?" I saw that Lobo book graded, and it's a CBCS graded Lobo, 8.0. And I said, "Oh, that's kind of high for that book." And he goes, "Oh, I have another one." So he walks me to the back and pulls this one out, and I was like, "This is a much better copy than the one graded." And he wanted $50 for it. Maybe I got it for 40. We'll see. But I thought it was going to be even a 9.8 the way it looked. It was such a pristine, clean book, and it's a cool cover. It's iconic in the DC sense, but Lobo looks nothing like that now. He will look nothing like that when James Gunn brings him to the big screen. But overall, it's a cool book, and I
Yeah, I
wanted
mean,
it as a kid and finally got it.
if you ever watch any like Hot 10 videos, like I watch Mighty Comics' Hot 10 videos every week. This has been on the Hot 10 7 weeks in a row now, somewhere in the top 10. And obviously, it's because of the whole Jason Momoa is going to play Lobo rumor, and James Gunn going to use Lobo, all that, obviously.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I wanted him because I felt that he would be that Wolverine type character for DC. Maybe I think he's maybe more of a Deadpool character for DC, and um, what's her name? Um, she's she was in the Suicide Squad, blonde hair
Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn. I think Harley Quinn has become that Batman Adventures is a couple $1,000 book if you find it in high grade, and I think that's the more comparable book to Hulk 181 in the DC
Yeah.
universe. But either way, I wanted this book, and I found a second one in the wild at an antique store for $2. It wasn't as
Nice.
good a grade. Ended up trading that one, and I got a Miles Morales or Ultimate Comics one for it. So I was able to trade it. Probably should have kept both of them, but I think both have upside potential here. Miles Morales and Lobo. So at least I got one of each. But cool book. Happy to have it. Like I said, I always wanted this one as a kid. So um, speaking of Deadpool, New Mutants '98. This is my #5 book acquisition of this year. They're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. You can get them anytime you want on eBay. It was one I could never find though as a kid, and like Deadpool a lot. I'm a Liefeld fan. His early artwork is great. His later artwork got sloppy, in my opinion. This cover is great. It's like he really could. Those covers popped, and I wanted this book but never could find it. I had X Force 2, so I had his second appearance, but I just never came across this book. So I pulled the trigger early on in the collecting. Again, a book I didn't have as a kid. wanted, so I got it, and may have overpaid for it, but I think it'll even out in the end once this movie, next Deadpool movie comes out, because Ryan Reynolds is who should play Deadpool, just like Jason Momoa is the guy who should be playing Lobo. I think those are spot on. Tony Stark and or excuse me, Robert
Robert
Downey
Downey
Jr. and
Jr.
Iron Man. I mean, those are three perfect fittings, perfect fittings. So, just a great, cool book. Always wanted it. Glad to have it. Wish I'd have found it in the wild, but didn't come that way. Next book, let's see, this is gonna be number 4 on my list. This is Amazing Spider-Man 238. John Romita Jr., right, artist on this book. Had this book as a kid, and at a comic show, a guy wanted to buy. I had two box. I brought a box of comics with me, and then a couple books outside the box I was looking to trade. And the guy said, "How much do you want for that whole box?" And I gave him a number, and he bought the box. And I must have forgot to take out the ASM 238 from that box, and it's got sold with the box of the other dollar comics that was in that stupid box I have. And I said to myself, I got to get this book back. And through some of the things I found at antique stores and auctions, I was able to make some decent trades, get some cash, and add a book that I paid next to nothing for to get this. Now I didn't pay $650 for it, a lot less than that, but still, this is a nice showing book. It's got the tattoos. It's an 8.5 on CBCS. I do think I could crack it, send it into the CGC, and get closer to a 9.2 maybe on it. I don't think I'll ever do that, but at least that's an option. But it's one I stupidly got rid of, kicking myself as a kid, didn't pay attention, gave up a pretty sweet book. That was, again, there was a lot of hype for Ned, Superman or Spider-Man's best friend playing Ned in the next Ned Leeds in the next movie, and that kind of died off. But I think if in the next Spider-Man movie with what's his name,
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, if his best friend in the show becomes Hobgoblin and doesn't just die off at the end of that in that particular movie, this may have some staying power like Venom.
Yeah, so on this cover, this is John Romita Jr. So John Romita Sr. is probably the most classic thought of Spider-Man artist from the Silver Age, out after Ditko left. I personally think Romita Jr. is not good. That being said, this cover is his Sistine Chapel. Like,
Yep.
This cover is awesome. Everything else I think is pretty crap, but this
He
is
he
awesome.
does some decent covers, but you're right. A lot of people knock him. I think you can knock Liefeld the same way. He's done some great covers. Some, like you said, some Sistine Chapels like New Mutants '98 or X Force One. But then he's done some sloppy, and that happens. I don't see too many McFarlane books like that. So some of these artists fall into that realm. This is definitely iconic for him. His best work. But great cover. Glad to have it slabbed again. One I had to go back and get, and had to work to get this one. Took me the whole show, walking back and forth, working these dealers to try to get some of that money to trade for this. But happy to have it back.
Yeah.
Now this next one, and that's, let me see. Whoop, went too far. I don't have a picture of it. My in between is going to be, and I guess I didn't put it in here, is Punisher #1, uh, a book. So I don't have a picture of it because it's an iconic cover in itself. Mike Zeck. It's one I saw as a kid at the comic book stores. My mom said that's too violent. You can't have that book. She wouldn't buy it. The only one I was able to buy was the other Punisher one, the '87, the main story. I'm talking the Punisher miniseries book where he's shooting the guns out of nowhere.
Yep.
That is one that I wanted to, so iconic, great cover. Um, and I wasn't able to get it as a kid. Didn't see it very often. It was usually overpriced when I did see it, so I never did buy it. Wasn't really allowed to until I got older, and then I just wasn't able to get it. But it was definitely a cool book. Have it on the shelf somewhere back there. But it was one of my definite needed to have since childhood, and I was able to get it Next one, Spider-Man 300. My favorite artist, my buddy McFarlane. Um, Great cover. This book, I had this book as a kid, and during my time during that, late 2018, 2017, I decided I wasn't going to collect much anymore. I hadn't been into it for years, and I thought I'll just sell some books. I ended up selling 298, 99, and 300 for cheap. And I was once I got back into it, I said I gotta. That's the first book I gotta get. And I went back to the same person I sold the book to, and he no longer had it, but he had it. And I look back at the pictures because I smartly I took a picture of everything I traded at the time, so I went back to see, and the ASM that I traded or sold back then was a direct copy. Now, I know there's a little bit of difference between the two, direct and newsstand. Um, Either way, I didn't know that as well when I got back into it early this year. And the two copies the guy had were both newsstands. So it was probably a 6.0. I bought it for $500, $400, somewhere like that. And I just said, this is the only book I'm going to buy this year. I just have to get that book back because I wasn't as into it as we are now. Start off slow and hear how far we've come. But this is the book that basically started it all for me this year was getting back and getting this book. And I bought it from the guy and probably overpaid for it. Wasn't the same book, but I was just happy to have it. And then the next show I went to, actually before the next show I went to, actually the first show of the year, I ended up buying this graded copy because I wanted a better presenting copy of it because I didn't want to send it in to get to CGC. I'd much rather buy it. So I paid a decent buck for this book, but I wanted a nice looking copy that was affordable. So I got this one here, the 9.2, went to the next show and couple hours north of me, and I ended up trading that one that I had bought back just a couple weeks earlier, thankfully, and I got a bundle of books for it, so I got a good deal out of it. Got my money back for it, but I had to get it back just because it was an iconic cover. I should never sold it. I have no idea what grade mine was. Probably it's 7.0 or 8.0, somewhere in that range, but just kicking myself for getting rid of stuff.
I also wonder if anyone's done like an official count, but like, is this the most homage cover in comics? Like, homage being that they have taken this design and just reused it for dozens of other characters, right? Spawn, every Spider-Gwen, Miles Morales. There's a whole cover like this. The next issue, 301, is this exact cover, but with red suit and a white background. Like, it is done so many times. And so I'm curious if it is the most homaged cover.
Well, what's funny about it is that this cover was an homage the following in 301.
Yeah, so I was just saying, yeah, it's a red suit with a white background.
Yeah, so he homaged himself the next printing he did,
Yeah.
and then he did it himself again for all those Spawn books. So it probably is that one. I think now Hulk 340 is becoming more of a homage, more so now. But this one is definitely probably leaps and bounds above any other book. But
yeah,
it's a great book. I'm glad to have it back. Maybe someday I'll trade down just to get a better presenting copy, or not. Maybe get a lower grade but just as good presenting copy because really, unless you got a 9.8, there's really no difference, between probably 7 and 9.6. If there's no crease on the cover, you can't see it, won't make a difference. So
yeah.
And then my top book for the year, ASM,
big one,
Amazing Spider-Man 129. My favorite character was the Punisher, hence why I had to get that Punisher 1 book, and I slowly worked my way up to getting his first appearance this year. I did not trade for it. I did not sell a bunch of stuff. I basically just pulled the trigger on eBay, stupidly, in a eBay bidding war. I got it. I think I may have overpaid a little bit for it. This book will come back to this level. I'm sure you can get a cheaper copy now in that same grade, but it's iconic cover for me and you. We both, this is one I wanted to find years ago, and it was even pricey then, just like in our last episode, the 181. It was an expensive book that we weren't able to, or I wasn't able to buy as a kid.
And when you think about first appearances, and like an ideal first appearance is with them on the cover, right? I've already mentioned Hulk 181 is my all-time favorite cover, but like Take that out. This is the best first appearance cover. Like, does not get better than that.
Yep, it pops. It's yellow again. Hulk 180 and 181, the yellow and the red, and then you got this book in yellow. It just pops. And when they redid this book for Marvel Tales, and again, if you find the Marvel Tales version of this, it's not a cheap book to buy. It's $50 or something, because most Marvel Tales books aren't worth much. But they redid it in a red cover,
Yeah.
so almost like the Hulk 181 and 180, right? So it's kind of cool, but it definitely pops. I struggled. The first show I went to, my goal was to get this book or that Hobgoblin, the ASM 238, and the people that had it for a couple thousand. They weren't even graded, and they weren't even going to trade for it. So, I finally just had to pull the trigger on eBay, and it's not a great story for how I acquired my Grail book. I'm hoping our acquisition of 181 will have a better story than this one. But it just sometimes you got to pull the trigger, and when it's in front of you there on eBay, because it's a 5.5, it's mid grade, it's what do you call it? Custom cover, custom label. It's a great presenting book. It looks great for the grade of it. So I'm happy to have it. I got a whole shelf of Punisher books because I was able to keep my Punisher one, the '87 ongoing Unlimited series book, the green cover. I got that one graded. I got my Punisher one mini series, and I got my ASM 129 all on my top shelf up there. So happy to have them. They look good together. So it's a nice fitting book. So,
Yeah.
but that is where we went in 2022. Started off
Yeah.
low for me. I guess we'll call it a big acquisition to drop a couple $100 on a book being fresh into it, and then I spent my time antiquing it up in antique stores, finding some stuff, and then ended with I think that Silver Surfer was the last book I bought. So um, quite the journey this year, I would say.
What are the regrets, misses for you for 2022?
The miss for me is going to be regret. Actually, let me go back to it. Is
Batman.
Batman 239. I probably may buy this again. I may eBay this book in a graded version. Um, I'm sure this one will present fine. It could get cleaned fine. When I had this book, I have some friends of mine who are big into collecting, mostly Golden Age and Silver Age. They don't touch the modern stuff. And I sent them pictures of the book, and I said, "Could you guys clean and upgrade this?" And they said, "Probably not." Sent it to somebody else who was being advertised through one of the you know YouTube shows I watch. They didn't even answer me back. They said maybe. They didn't even give me very good information on what they could do to the book. So I thought, oh, I'm not going to mess with it. With my luck, it'll fall apart. If I don't get it preserved. So I got rid of it, and I'm happy to get rid of it because the books I got, I was able to trade for some other things I got now, like I think I have a Web of Spider-Man 118, which is the first appearance of the Scarlet Spider. I got the Ultimate Comics 1, and I got a Deathlock or Astonishing Tales 25, another one I wanted as a kid. So there was some good that came out of the trading of this book, but you know, I put on Instagram, said available for trade, and someone hit me up right away, and the deal sounded good, and it was a good deal for both of us, but kind of wish I'd have kept it.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
I don't have any misses in terms of like I wish I would have bought that. Since I just started in 2022, like my tastes have definitely evolved. As I said, now I'm into the kind of the bigger grail type books, but I was able to take what I spent money on and trade. Like 9 of those 10 books I had were all via trade. Um, so in the end, it all worked out. My regret though is I did spend some money on getting books signed. Not that those are bad things, right? As a kid, I loved getting athletes to sign my hats, my cards, my jerseys, whatever, right? So, like, I've always been a fan of signature stuff. And as I started trading for these books that I showed, you really start to learn that, like, a lot of people don't like signatures on their comic books for whatever reason. And So I really learned that like while a signature I think is still cool, it's hard to actually gain any value with the signature, right? Unless it's maybe Stanley or Jack Kirby, for instance, or Todd McFarlane seems to be the one that has good premium on it. So I regret getting as many things as I did signed. That being said, I would say like if there's a book that you would hold forever in your PC, you know, don't be against getting that signed if you have an opportunity necessarily, right? Because you're not needing to use that to go to another book. Um, but if you're getting books that you may hold for a while, but you do tend to use to get bigger books, whatever, it's just a lot easier to move books that are unsigned, in my opinion. There's a wider spectrum of people that would be interested in that book if it's unsigned than it would be if it's signed.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so that's just kind of what I learned in this trading in the last few months. Um,
Have
so
you been
that
have you been able to use your signature books for trades?
so I have in a sense. So the guy I've mainly been trading with, he doesn't take any of the signature ones because he says he has a hard time reselling them.
Huh.
So what I have been able to do is I am able to sell those, and so use the cash from the sale of those as like if there's makeup value I've got to come with in a trade. Like his book that I'm trading for is $1,000, and I've got $800 in trade. Well, good. I sold this one signature book for $200, so I can use that money. So I still kind of consider that in the trading flipping process. So it's still
Oh,
not
right, right.
new. It's still not new money to me. So again, you can sell signature books for sure. It's just, in my opinion, like you're gonna work a little harder. So if the book's not forever PC and you're gonna use it for something else, like my advice would be not to get it signed because you're gonna have a wider pool of people that want it if it's unsigned. And
Yeah.
again, it just if you look at like pricing on books, like getting it signed by anyone that's not, like I said, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, or Todd McFarlane, like the premium you're getting is not much.
No. And I was one that there's a show that's been going on in my hometown for a number of years. It's the Steel City Con in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. So it's in a convention center. It's been going on since, I don't know, at least 10, 15 years, I think. And I never got in. They had plenty of actors and artists there, and I never wanted to get in line because I can't stand standing in line to get a signature and um, take up the whole day. I'd rather go around and try to trade or sell books, and that's what my goal was at the shows. So getting back into this year, I did not get books graded either. That was something I didn't even contemplate doing. And through talking with you, there are those signature series that CGC has, and I think I missed the Ramada one. You got your Hobgoblin signed, which
Yeah, Ramita by Ramita. Yeah,
Ramita Ramita got it signed. Jim Lee had one, and then McFarlane had one. So I missed the first two, Ramita, and I missed
Jim
Jim
Lee.
Lee. And then with McFarlane, I had already after it got announced, my um, books had already been sent in to CGC for grading, and one of the books was Hulk 340 and Batman 423. Both books I would have got signed. Had I known, I would have held back and maybe got one of those books signed, maybe both. I would not have cracked my ASM 300 to get it signed. I was worried. I've heard horror stories that
Yeah,
sometimes those books come back in lower grade, and even though the signature would have made up for it, you're paying 120 bucks for McFarlane's signature on top of what I paid for that book. I would have had to get some big money out of that book just to sell it, and I don't know if I could have done that. So I didn't do it, and that could be one of my regrets for this year is maybe sending one book in to McFarlane. But I think for like you were saying, having that one iconic book signed, not just having any book signed or having that one artist. So like your favorite Jim Lee book get it signed. My favorite McFarlane book get that signed. Just one, just to have one PC book. And I don't want to send my books back in to get them cracked and regraded and all that stuff because
yeah, I
my
would agree
Hulk
with you
book
there.
came back like at 9.2 and I didn't want it to come back any less.
Yeah,
And again, he couldn't have hurt that Batman 423 at 7.0. I don't think he could have done worse than that. So signing that would have been good, but it was too late after it got got back to me, and it's like, oh, he's signing books. Let me send it back out. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, those are part of the part of our regrets for the year. I do agree. Maybe I would have liked to get one signed, and you figure you probably want to focus on all the signatures. At least would have got one signed. But um, so next, as we end here today, I think we can maybe go into our targets for 2023. What are your thoughts? Going to
Yeah,
targets and
let's
then
do the targets, and then maybe we'll do like a 2022 recap part 2 and do the movie stuff next time.
okay, that works. Uh, Yourself, targets for 2023. I don't have pictures of everything. I'll just share one picture.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously target number 1. That was our whole
Yep.
previous episode. And again, like I'll name off several books here, but kind of with the budget that I have for comic books, it's really only my list is only too long, right? It's Hulk 181, like you see here, and the one JP has and showed his number 1 book, which is ASM 129. So strategizing to get those 2 books is my top 2023 goal. Um, Obviously, you may find I have, as I've mentioned before, I have a list of books that I want to get for the next 15, 20 years. On that list, I've also kind of narrowed down a handful of books that I would put as the highest of priorities, being um, Fantastic Four number 12, which is the first Hulk and Thing encounter, ASM, Amazing Spider-Man 14, which is the first appearance of Green Goblin, and like Journey into Mystery 85, which is the first appearance of Loki. But I think those will probably be post 2023, so that'd be in the next couple of years. But the 2 for 2023, Hulk 181, ASM 129.
Yep. For myself, and one of the things I noticed between our 2 lists is that yours is almost all Silver Age. You
Yeah.
got maybe one Bronze Age, which you would say the Giant Size X-Men one is Bronze Age, but everything else is or Silver Age, right?
Marvel Spotlight 5 is a Bronze Age. Um,
Is the Iron Man Bronze Age, or is that considered?
Iron Man 55, the first Thanos, is Bronze Age. Iron Man 1 is Silver Age.
And the majority of my books are all Bronze Age themselves, except for that Tech 239. But I just noticed the difference in that. I mean, the significance of mine are more of like childhood ones. Yours were the childhood ones that you saw, like probably said, "Oh my God, one day I'll get that book," right?
Yeah.
You know, so it was similar, but definitely we have very similar tastes. But our top 10 list of this year are just different in silver versus Bronze Age. Just my heaviness on the Bronze Age. But when I look going to
My
2020,
2023, they're the Hulk 181 and ASM 29, both bronze.
yeah, I mean but then you got Fantastic 412 is I don't know if that's considered bronze or silver.
That's silver.
Jim,
Jim 85 is silver, and ASM 14 is silver.
And then you got a couple of those Batman books you had on there too, as out there, 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. Oh, and just real quick, I know we had a couple people told me that sometimes we use a lot of the lingo and they may not know what we're talking about. So with comic books, there's kind of ages that they talk about. The golden age is kind of like the first books, right, from the 40s into the 50s, and then from like 60 to 70 is the silver age, I think. Now, don't quote me on this; these are rough. And I think 70 to 84 is bronze. 84 to like 92 is copper, and then everything from 92 on is kind of considered modern.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing. I ran into that myself on CGC's one of their, what do you call it?
Tiers.
Forums. And I was asking a question about polybags, and I said it was a copper age. And someone said, your book is not copper age, it's modern. And I was like, well, okay, buddy. You're in the wrong thread. I'm like, excuse me. To me, there was that in between bronze and modern is copper, right?
Yeah.
But I thought that extended a little bit further into the 90s than 92.
Yeah. So and just also on that note, for defining terms, we've said CGC a lot. CGC is the main grading company out there. They're the ones that put that slab and the number on it that says like what value or grade the book is. CBCS, it was JP's Hobgoblin book. That's the other grading company out there. Like there are a few others, but It's like
there's
market share wise, CGC is like 75-80%, and then
that's
CBCS is probably like 15%. Yeah, that's the CBCS right there. And then a handful of other guys make up a couple 5% or less of the market, I would say, is my guess. I don't know exactly.
and the thing of it is you can when you're on eBay, the hope is that maybe you get a CBCS book less than the CGC and you can crack it, which means you bust it out of the case, resubmit it to CGC because their books command some type of a premium. But I don't normally see PGX or ESG. I don't see those books for too much less, especially in big
Yeah.
name books like Hulk, that you would be able to buy them and crack them and resubmit them and get some upside on that because I think
Yeah.
people
And
know that's what you do.
I would Google, like, if you're going to go if you're going to go anything that's not CGC, like, do some research on the grading companies. There's all kinds of things you'll find out that you should learn about before. But CGC is kind of considered the gold standard. And, like, especially as you get towards the ultra grails, like, the gap widens. Like, I think, JP, I showed you a Tales of Suspense 39, which is the first appearance of Iron Man. And I want to say, what was it? It was like a CGC 6.0 went for like 200,000. Again, I don't remember the exact numbers. We'll just say it's like 200,000. And the CBCS 8.0, so it was a higher grade, went for 40% less than the CGC lower grade. So CGC
Big
is
difference.
definitely your best value. Like, in my opinion, I don't know why you don't only use CGC, especially now. Like, their turnaround times are cooking. Like,
The,
there's a reason like they have that premium now.
yeah, and I try to only buy the CGC books. My Hobgoblin one was that's the only one I could find in that show, and it was a decent grade. And again, I could probably crack it, but again, just to have the book was okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, but CBCS, I think they only be, unless it's a screaming deal, right, that you see online. The only other reason to use them, and this is what I've got through some of the streams I've watched or YouTube videos, is that CGCS, if you have a book signed, will not, unless they witness the signature, like the signature series they have with McFarlane or Jim Lee, and they do it
Yeah,
in house. If they don't have anything, even a certificate of authenticity,
yeah, they
they will
won't.
not. They
Yeah,
will like qualify it or purple label or something
the
or
green label, I mean, it'll say like Todd McFarlane written on cover or some crap
right.
like that.
Right.
Or
So
yeah,
CGC has blue labels, which means it's a universal grade. If it comes back purple or green, that means something wrong with the book.
yeah,
You
it's
don't want it to come
restored
back that
or
way.
it's qualified, like not complete, and
Yeah,
that
green's qualified.
decreases the value of your book huge.
Right. So what CBCS will do is if you submit a book to them that's signed, they will they will check the signature and make sure it's authentic, and
Yeah,
your book will come back as an authentic signature.
yeah,
You don't need to have a signature authenticity guarantee with it. None of that. They will just check it. And I have a Dreadstar one signed by Jim Starlin. I know it's Jim Starlin signed it. There's no authenticity guarantee with it, and I know it's his. I'm going to send it to CBCS so I can get it slabbed and
now
that way.
CBCS will give you a gold label, but they will have, it'll either say verified signature, or if they witness it, it'll say witnessed signature,
So
right? But they
yeah,
still will both get the gold label at CBCS.
and we ran into this recently with CBCS. Even if their book is restored or missing the Marvel value stamp, like what happens
Yeah,
a lot with
that's
Hulk 181, it'll still be blue label CBCS
yeah,
blue label, and you have to read that it is that way. So you come back with a
yeah,
yellow label, meaning signed for CBCS, and have to see is it verified or witnessed.
yeah. So just
Difference
a
there.
piece of advice for anybody out there that collects and maybe new to this: if you are gonna get books graded, do a bunch of research and learn all the different things and nuances about this. And hell, you can hit JP or I up any day, and I'm happy to share the wealth of knowledge that we've researched ourselves and learned from each other or from other people.
Yeah, we took me a long time to finally submit my books this year. I'm glad I did it. I don't. I have some. I'm thinking about submitting again, and I'm holding off because again, that 75 or later or earlier books, I'm kind of curious what that's going to cost to send them in. And I'm not one to, you know, raw is good for me too. If it's a way old book, maybe it needs to be restored or preserved. But if it's a modern book or 75, older type book, that's in good shape. I'm not too worried about it. But that's more research you and I can talk about down the road when it comes to it. But we'll see if we do some more submitting. Um, but I think real quick, I'll go into my list. And again, Hawk 181 is on the cover still on our screen. It is my top grail to get this year. For me, the next option is going to be a book that Rohan is going to send to me. Where's it at here? There it is. Oh, went right past it. That one, Giant Size X-Men #1. He'll just send it to me, and I'll take pictures and act like I have it, and I'll send it back to you. But it is a cool book. It's iconic. Besides Punisher, Wolverine, and is one of my main favorite characters. It's a book I saw back in the day and should have got it and didn't, and I want to get it this time again.
It's another one like my. It's another one like my Fantastic Four 48 that I talked about. It was like I always liked the cover. That was really cool. But like once I held it, I was like, damn, this is awesome.
Yeah, it just looks good when you hold it and say, this is it. This is the book. Just like the Hulk 181. I have reservations about spending that kind of money on a book. I'm hoping I can trade for either one of these two books.
But I traded for my GSX1. It is possible.
Yeah. And again, as long as maybe you don't get one graded, maybe it comes to me raw and we send them in, and maybe we'll do a bunch, send in a CGC. But the third one here is Iron Man 1. This is one that iconic too for me. Another one like Submariner 1. I love seeing that big premiere issue stamp on it that they have on some of those books back in the day, and it would definitely be a cool one to add to my collection of that Silver Age. Again, this is not the most expensive Iron Man book to have. Tales to Astonish 39.
Tales of Suspense.
Tales of Suspense 39 is the book to have, and it's almost unreachable at that price. I'm sure we could, mortgage the house to get it or something, but how reasonable is that? But again, this is just, in my opinion, a great cover of a great character who was a no character during our collecting times, but became much bigger thanks to Robert Downey Jr. and the MCU. I think it's a book to have because it does have some history for us, because my kids grew up on Iron Man more so than you and I grew up with Spider-Man. I mean, they didn't see a Spider-Man movie until few years back. Sony finally brought him back to this. Well, again, he wasn't part of the MCU until recent. You did have the Sony books or movies, but this is definitely those are probably my top three, with Mr. Wolverine being the top acquisition target this year. I got my Red Rider and I'm my hunting gear, and I'm ready to find it one of these days. So
let's go. So yeah, we'll maybe do a part 2 to recap 2022. We'll talk about movies and shows and things like that.
Yeah, because I think we'll maybe we can put it together with 2022 shows and movies and shows, and then what's coming up in 2023 and how those may affect the books we're going to get, or the books we're trying to get, and what's going to happen to MCU and the DCU in 2023.
Yep.
So
love it.
Stay tuned for that, guys. Appreciate your time today. Try to keep this to an hour or below. Enjoyed talking about our last year and how our collecting went into overdrive, we'll say. Started out slow, went through the different gears, and here we are revving forward into 2023, trying to grow that collection. So
yeah. Happy New Year's, guys.
Happy New Year, everybody. Appreciate the time. Until next time, we will see you soon.